Hi, everyone. Happy International Women's Day. We're so excited to be here with you today. I'm Jaclynn, co-founder of Fyli, and we have an amazing panel that we are about to bring to you now, Female Venture Funding in China. And before we introduce our guests for this evening, I wanted to just tell you a little bit about International Women's Day and what we are doing. So Fyli stands for Tribe. We are a peer-to-peer mentorship and accountability group, a true mastermind. And we have teamed up with an amazing technology partner, AA Labs, to create a global celebration of unity and hope, bringing together men and women from around the world. Our community is committed to welcoming all while celebrating the social, economic, cultural, and political achievements of women. Our mission is to reshape the narrative, change perspectives, ignite wonder, and mark an important call to action to accelerate gender parity through support and alignment. This panel is so important to us because we have an amazing Chinese community, and I would love to pass it over to my co-founder, Summer.
Hi, everyone. We're so excited to see you here. As you know, this China panel is a special sector we added for this year. So it's a global celebration. We have audience joining from Africa, from Europe, from South America, from anywhere. But we only have the China panel because we know we have a community in China already. And all of you guys told us you guys want to connect it with us. That's why we start with morning time in China. And we're so grateful to have Christine Yu and Monica here to join us. So Christine Yu is founder and managing director of Lapidary, and Monica Xie is an early stage investor at Matrix Partners China. So without further ado, I will start with Christine Yu. Why not you give you a brief introduction about yourself?
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be joined by Monica as well on this panel. I like to say that I thrive in the intersection of innovation, profit, and purpose. I'm an impact investor and venture builder. And we, through my company, which I founded called Lapidary, we invest in and incubate early to mid-stage for-profit and mission-focused companies in Hong Kong and Southeast Asia. While we look for a variety of impact mandates, we're particularly focused on the sustainable apparel space, and we've recently launched our first wholly incubated sustainable apparel brand called And All. I also strongly believe in empowering other women, and I've co-founded a nonprofit organization called Girls Just Want to Have Funds. It's focused on obliterating the gender investing gap through community and education as a means to financial empowerment. Response has been overwhelming. We're growing rapidly, and it's a message that really strikes a chord for many women because money is power.
Amazing. And we're super grateful. And also that I know it's the first week for you guys to return back to work after the Lunar New Year. So happy New Year to Christine Yu and Monica Xie. And I also know that Monica Xie, you moved back to China at the beginning of this year. And you just finished moving in Beijing. So welcome. And why not you give us a brief intro of who you are and what you do?
Hi, very nice to meet everyone here. Thanks, Summer. So my name is Monica. As Summer mentioned, I just moved back from Silicon Valley to Beijing. So good morning, everyone, for everyone coming from China. Currently, I'm an early stage investor at Matrix Partner China, primarily focused on enterprise software, which is a very interesting area, especially for female founders, investors. I would love to touch upon it later in our conversation. Prior to joining Matrix Partner, I actually spent a couple of years between China and US, and as well as across both sides of the table. So right before I moved back, I was when I was in Silicon Valley, I was in senior business development manager at AWS and focus on AI and machine learning for startups and venture capital. And before that, I actually spent a couple of years at an early stage startup, AI startup in Silicon Valley, leading their business development efforts and building partnership with leading companies in both China, US, and Europe. So very excited to come back to China to start this new year, and very looking forward to this conversation today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So we're going to dive right into this panel. Thank you both for being here. Christine, my first question is for you. What are some of the main differences between China and the US when it comes to funding and investing, especially for women?
I think that, it's a great question. I think when you look at the systemic challenges around the fundraising process, it does actually tell you a lot about the main differences. I think the numbers do speak for themselves. There are more women in decision-making roles, especially in the China kind of market. According to Bloomberg, there's about 17% of investing partners who are female, and 80% have at least one woman. Whereas in the US, women only make up about 10% of the investing partners, and only half of the firms have any woman in that rank. I think from a founder perspective, I think in the Chinese government has estimated that females founded something like 55% of all new internet companies, whereas 22% of startups have or more women on their founding team. So these are incredible numbers. So I think that looking at the overall kind of ecosystem really does tell you a lot about the differences in the two jurisdictions.
Yeah, thank you so much, Christine Yu. I think that's a good question, and I also like Monica to answer it, and here is the reason why. Why we invited Christine and Monica, because both of you have the past experience working in the United States and also returned back to Asia afterwards. And as I mentioned earlier, so this is the only panel Jaclynn and I would love to moderate. We have another panels going on because this was very so. Monica, I would love to hear what's your thoughts on this question as well.
Yeah, this is a topic that I'm really interested in. I'm so glad that Christine brought in some very impressive number, which actually align closely with my observation in Silicon Valley and in China. When I came back and when I began to engage in the venture capital community in China, I was really surprised by how many female leaders there are in China. I think it's because this is still a relatively new industry in China. So you see so you can see so many female leaders thriving with this ecosystem. For example, there are some, I will give one specific example. I think females are very good, normally very good connectors and communicators. While in China, you see a lot of FA, like financial advisory firms emerging even in the early stage investment, which is not common in Silicon Valley. And many of those firms are actually funded by female founders. So I think that's really incredible. And you have also seen a lot of female entrepreneurs emerging. I think this is shared in both countries. However, since I mentioned before, I focus primarily on enterprise software, on B2B. I would say that I still would like to see more female founders in this space, because still, like in both China and US, I think primarily the majority. I don't have a number on my side, but really like the majority of B2B founders are still male. So, but I think with the industry evolving very fast, I really expect to see like more and more female founders, and we have already seen some of them in our portfolio.
Absolutely fantastic. And it just makes us so happy. It's wonderful news. As we had kind of announced to everyone, we are planting our seeds and starting to expand to China in 2022 with Fyli, just because there is such a large need and population of female founders and investment dollars to be found in China. So it's very exciting. And thank you for confirming some of those wonderful and impressive numbers. So Christine, back to you. As an impact investor, why and how should investors unlock impact from a gender lens perspective?
It's very simple. To me, diversity drives innovation. I think you need diverse perspectives to push the envelope, to ask the tough questions, to ask better questions, to achieve better problem-solving outcomes, better risk management. The list goes on. But let's take a step back and let's, understand that the reality is that, women earn less thanks to the gender pay gap. They invest less thanks to the gender investing gap. And women also experience an extremely tough time accessing capital for their businesses thanks to the gender funding gap. So I think in addition to investing in women-founded businesses and driving for more gender balance in leadership teams, we do need to focus on the broader systemic environment for women. I think when we look at also kind of, financial results, gender diverse companies have better financial results. And the research bears this out. Companies which have gender balanced teams are 15% more likely to outperform their national industry medians, according to a fantastic recent report from the Sasakawa Peace Foundation on the gender lens investing landscape in East and in kind of the rest of Asia. So I think, we do need to look at systemic solutions. And the good news is that we are seeing more change. The last, piece of the puzzle, though, also is that we're just not seeing enough women in investing roles. And I think that that's a really huge challenge that we need to globally overcome, not just kind of in Asia Pacific. If you look at the numbers again, I like numbers, women in investment management, senior leadership roles is something around 4%. And this stat actually shocks me. Women only manage between 1 and 3.5% of assets under management. So, having Monica here today, myself, I think that, we do need to see more gender diversity in teams making capital allocating decisions in the sector as a whole.
Oh, Christine, I really like your answer. In fact, your answer is a perfect transition for me to ask Monica the next question. So, in the United States, we have the topic and conversation going on for the investor gaps, like for different genders, right? And I know in mainland China, there is a difference because this is not in the conversation yet. So to diversify the team, as you said, we need to look at the strengths from female founders or investors. So my question for Monica is, what are some shared strengths you see from female founders and investors?
Thanks, Summer. I think some strengths, that's something that I really like to talk about, because I think sometimes we focus too much on some unfair experience some female founders, investors have experienced. But I think a better way to look into the future is to really look at what we are good at and how can we take full advantage of it. I would say the top 2 strengths that I have seen in both female founders and investors are communication and empathy. And both of those are becoming more and more important. I would like to dive deeper into it from 2 angles. One is AI machine learning, because that's how I have spent like my past several years in at AWS and at the top AI startup. And that I think with more and more of AI machine learning application coming up, and that which are very good at very logical thinking and pattern recognition. And so we see that in the future, the jobs that will not be easily replaced by AI machine learning will involve in more like human interaction and communication. And that's what female founders and female are generally good at. So I've seen that in a lot of those like AI companies, like female founders can actually help build a more build humanity into an AI application. And on the other hand, from investor perspective, now I've worked with so many founders, and I think a very common thing you have a very common reason for many startups to fail is the communication collaboration between the founders. And I've seen that female investors sometimes can actually play a very crucial role in this, because founders are very lonely. It's a very lonely job, and having investors by your side who can listen, who can communicate and emphasize with you, it can be very, very powerful. Not to mention in the world of B2B business, you also have to listen to your customers, and you are able to do it, like compared to like customers. Facebook has like billions of users. You cannot do that. But like in enterprise world, if a female founders can actually like sort out a very complicated buyer decision-making process in the enterprise, I think communication plays a very, very key role there. So yeah, I think that like as female, we will see ourselves thriving in the coming new intelligent world.
I love that. What a great answer. I mean, we are great leaders. We are empathetic, and it's just wonderful to hear you say that, and the strengths and how we're able to contribute and diversify. Christine, my next question is for you. How do you see yourself individually contributing to the conversation on innovation, impact, and gender?
I think you can answer this question in two ways, both as a funder, as well as an innovator. So I think as an impact investor, I don't specifically have a mandate for gender lens investments. However, because of the impact investing lens, you tend to see a lot more women founders or co-founders enter the space. And so I'm pleased to say that over 50% of the companies we've invested in has a woman or a co-founder. And I think what we've found is that it's an investment thesis that's paid off. Our portfolio teams are very resilient, have been able to pivot and thrive in the pandemic. I think the second thing I would say is that mentoring women founders is extremely important in this process. And how I want to contribute to the early stage space and the gender lens space. I think that spending the time with women founders, even if it doesn't lead to an investable outcome, I think is extremely important, and we all have that responsibility to pay it forward in that way. And lastly, I think being an innovative funder is a way to also kind of encourage more women to enter the space and to show them that it is possible. So, for example, with our focus on the sustainable apparel space in a venture building strategy, which is not super common, I think just being someone, taking a seat at the decision-making table and being the change is quite essential in driving change.
Amazing, Christine Yu. And also I want to share, so you like data and so do I. So as we mentioned before, only 2% of VC fundings went to female funded business in the United States a few years ago. So my question for both of you, I'd like to start with Monica. So what are your top strategies for female founders get funded, especially early stage? And Fyli, we have 6,000 members as our global community, and our Fyli mastermind members, 80% of them are female founders. So it's an incredible questions that I'd like to have your answers. So our global community as well as our Fyli mastermind members can get benefited.
Great, thanks for the question, Summer. I think there's definitely, when it comes to looking for funding, there's definitely no silver bullet here. And before I dive into it, I would like to say that don't think too much about being a female founder. You are a founder, and you will be a successful founder. So any funding advice that you see from other places, like definitely coming from the top tier investors for all the founders, definitely apply to you. But still, I think for female founders, I think there are two specific topics I would like to talk about. Like first is yes, especially like I mentioned in this entire in entrepreneurship investment community, female is still the minority. I think when you enter, so I think one advice or from my experience is that when you enter the room, even if you see you are the only female in the room, which I have experienced a lot, look for what you are and other people have in common instead of the gender difference. In that way, you will feel much more empowered. You will still feel like it will enable you to gain more power and feel more connected with people in the room. And in this way, you will be able, and as a female, as we talked about it before, you will be able to fully unleash your strength in communication. I think that's very important as a start. And secondly, again, like especially in the AI, machine learning, and B2B space, we don't want to admit, but there is a bias towards female that, normally when you see a female in the room, you consider them as a business person, a non-technical person. That stereotype definitely exists. But from my experience, I think as a female, don't overthink about it. Don't let it affect how you communicate. Don't let it affect how you show your technical knowledge. Because getting a seat there is already a very good start. So I think, but you still need to use some tactic in your self-introduction, in your first in your first presentation or first thing to say. Make sure that you demonstrate. I am technical. I have the experience, or like this is the value that I will be able to bring it to the table. We don't want. We definitely want the stereotype to change over time, but I think before that, like there are still ways that you can gain the confidence in the room.
Yeah, it's so good. You know, it's very interesting. So in the US, we have an equivalent version of the panel we're doing here. So we invited Grace in from the Ring Group, and the Ring Group also has an office in Shanghai. And Grace shared similar opinions with you. Grace said, yes, you need to look for the connection, which is a similarity. I think for us, Fyli, we had a successful investor meeting with white male investor, and I think we were trying to look for the connection and the similarity. And Jaclynn was much better than me, and I rushed it. I was like, can we just get started? So it's definitely very good advice. And Christine, you, it's like, I want to hear your advice for us. Like, how can we get funded?
I completely agree with what Monica said. I think, don't think of yourself as a female founder. You are a founder first. And the advice I give, except for one thing, which I'm about to say, is really for all founders. I think number one thing I would say is that you need to own your story and your pitch. Investors will invest in you at the end of the day, and you're the best person who can tell that story. I wear another hat. I run the Hong Kong chapter of a regional angel investing group called AngelVest. And I can't tell you how many pitches I've seen, over in my lifetime. And I think this is the number one thing that gets founders and female, and also some female founders down, is the confidence to own that story. So own it and tell it and pitch it. The second thing I think more specific to female founders is there's been research that has shown that female founders tend to get different questions than male founders. I don't know if you've read this. It's basically prevention versus promotion questions, right? Where female founders tend to get asked about, well, if the business, what would happen if, what are your risk management frameworks in place, rather than, where do you see this going? What's the opportunity space? And I think that the advice I would give is that if you find yourself as a female founder getting a prevention question, to turn it and answer a promotion answer. I think that is the top tip, I would say. And then the last thing I would say is that, you can raise capital and money, it's dollars, it's going to help you in your business. However, I think the very key thing to remember is that you really need to find an investor who's truly additive to your business. It's a medium to long-term relationship. So you need to make sure there's a continued mind share and collaborative, supportive relationship just outside the dollars that they're going to provide into your business. So I think just be very be very aware of that when you are kind of talking to investors.
Thank you both so much. Those are great points. Connect with your investors, own your story, have confidence, and reframe that. Because Christine, we've also experienced that as well. So reframe those into promotions. I love that. Thank you both so much. This was so important. You were both very knowledgeable. We appreciate your time. This beautiful International Women's Day. Thank you so much for being here. And I pass it over to Summer.
Yes, and ladies and everybody who is watching from China, so we're just super grateful. So there is a funny story I really want to share with you all. So we are planning to expand into China in 2022, which is next year. But Jaclynn got so excited, and Jaclynn asked me, no, we have to go back to China this summer. So I just want to tell you guys from China, like it's been 11 years I lived in the States, but I know that we have a community in China, and the community needs Fyli, and we can't wait to go back to China. And Fyli and us, we look forward to growing together with you all and becoming the better versions of ourselves. So I want to say it in Chinese to wrap it up. So 谢谢大家，菲利愿意和你共同一起成长，然后希望我们可以变成更好的自己。So happy International Women's Day, everybody, and hopefully to see you soon in China.